This episode of This Uncanny Earth is brought to you by Cooking Basically. Find your new favorite recipe today.
Flawless. You loved it. You loved every bit. You loved every bit of that. That was flawless. That's right. What's up? Welcome back. Another episode. Episode 327, Seances. We're not going to be conducting any tonight, by the way. So any of you yahoos, well, I mean, I don't care. He can conduct one. It'll be at his house. They'll haunt his shit, not mine.
No, I've had enough trouble with mirrors and things around here. I don't need things in my house.
Yeah, you and mirrors don't get along very well.
Oh, yeah. I almost forgot about that. How many is it now?
Did I tell you? I don't know if I mentioned it. We actually... Oh, he popped out already.
I was like, I don't want to hear you.
You started off flawless, and then we...
space bar. I guess the space
we
bar
covered up the one mirror with like a... with one of those stained glass, like, decorative things that you just roll onto it. You press it down, the air bubbles and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's made a difference, honestly, because I didn't really notice a lot before, but we did that.
Did you? Why did you do that? Are you afraid of the?
Because it was facing the other mirror, and everybody said, "Oh, they're facing each other. That's bad."
Feng Shui. The energy bounces off the mirror.
So I don't believe that, but I guess in some countries that's the case. I just be like, damn. Now I can look at my back muscles so I can flex and see my chest and my back muscles.
I have a hard time trying to trim my hair now because I can't see behind me. So we've got like a hand mirror that I'm awkwardly trying to like. Well, I'm trying to shave my head. Like, I still feel like I've got patches of stuff. Anybody walking behind me is probably just laughing.
Yeah, anybody behind you at the store is
like, nobody can see my head. That's a good thing.
No, why don't you just take the other thing off? Why don't you just take it off and put a cloth over it whenever they're in there so that you can
she wanted to do something more semi-permanent with it, so that's what
I look like a buff granny. Thank you very much. In the chat, we got some jokesters. But yes, so Northeast Ohio got hit with some pretty severe storms yesterday, and our power was out for like a good almost 24 hours. Almost.
That's so good.
Almost.
Tornado, a small one, formed a little bit to the north up by Mogador and went through
I saw
Ravenna area. And I didn't hear a whole lot of real nasty damage, so it wasn't the worst it could have been, but sirens went off here and everything.
Power was out for quite a bit. So, yeah, I had to sleep without power. I can't sleep without power. I need that fan sound to get my zone, get in the zone, auto zone. So, yeah, that's what's been up. Oh, and I had a maple bacon waffle today. A maple bacon bourbon waffle.
With a cute anime kitty.
But we won't talk about that. But, yeah, it was good. It was good.
It's simple pleasures in life. That's the good stuff.
Yeah.
That's my treat to myself for working hard for the past 3 weeks, getting more buff.
You gotta have a cheat meal though. If you're doing the gym stuff, you gotta have the cheat meal.
Today was rest day, so I had to take a rest. Let me go get something to eat at the place. So tomorrow it's back to business. Maple bacon donuts are good too. Yes, I've had those. But we're not here to talk about maple bacon donuts or maple bacon burgers or maple bacon bourbon waffles. We're here to talk about seances, and I'm not the host this week. Oh, and don't worry, we won't have any avant-garde solo presentations like it was a band, like a jazz band, and everybody gets a round robin solo. So
I do have to give him his, some props for trying something new, because it was something different. Who knows? Maybe we'll revisit something like that in the future. I don't know. It was something. It was something,
all right.
But this is not my show tonight. This is Young Craig's show. Oh, I put your government name out there. They're gonna come and get you. This is Spider's show. So Spider and Seances, please take it away.
Well, right before we get in there, I just want to mention too, because it does involve potentially spirits and things. I did take a short trip a few days ago up to a place that we have been several times. I went up to Canal Fulton and walked the canals.
Oh,
and
nice.
I played with the Spirit Tracker app just to see if I'd pick up something, and I got some interesting stuff. I mean, it was broad daylight. There were people around, and you never know if what you're picking up is really something generated by the app for fun.
Yeah.
It's whether you want to hear from it or if it's picking up some actual signals. But it was interesting. And I did take a stop up at Molly Stark. Not for an appointment, obviously, but Molly Stark's, for anybody who doesn't know, is an abandoned sanitarium here in Ohio. It was used to house tuberculosis patients, and a lot of deaths happened on the property. It's part of Stark County Parks, but they have not kept up the park very well recently. There was a lot of overgrowth there, much farther from the building, and there's a lot of signs saying no trespassing, penalty of this and that, and so I didn't get too close at it. But it is a pretty interesting place. And rumor is that they're going to be tearing it down next year because it's a hazard, which would be unfortunate. I'm going to see if I can get some of us some special dispensation to get closer to it under supervision from whoever runs the place. Before they do that, I'm going to send some emails so we can get some up-close pictures, hear some stories from folks, and see what we can see. I don't think they'll let us inside by the sound of it, but I think if we can get up close. So everybody stay tuned for that in the possible near future, hopefully before summer is over. I don't know exactly. It depends on if they even listen to me. But I'm going to refer them to the show here because we're all the experts around here. And hopefully they see us professionally as people who are not going to mess anything up. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
I've been to Molly Stark, actually, before it was closed.
Yeah.
On a little tour. It was pretty cool. This was like 10, 15 years ago, I think.
It looked cool from the outside.
Closed, but...
It definitely has a presence. It's got not like a feeling like you feel like there's ghosts all over the place, but it's imposing.
You know what though? Would it be imposing if you didn't know its history?
The way it looks now with the overgrowth and stuff, it does kind of, because the way it's constructed, it's not like any other place. It didn't give me that feeling like a spiritual imposing, like there's weird energies here. It was just, that's a pretty interesting looking building with the plants overgrowing, the windows busted out. You know, it definitely looked like it was a place of interest. But so anyway, to the topic at hand.
Seances.
I said sciences. So last week, of course, with Stephen, we examined meditation. And meditation can sometimes be used as a means to try to attempt to connect with the spirit world. Now, while it's not the popular thing to do now, people still try to do it sometimes, but there is a way, supposedly, that people have been trying to contact the spirit world that's become popularized, it's become commercialized, it's become bigger than what it is, and it's kind of cheapened it out a little bit. And that's what seances are. They started to get popular as far as how we can gauge these things in the 18th century, late 1700s and onwards, and they got really big during Victorian times. It was a big social thing to have your friends come over and to hire a medium to come in and let's all sit down, let's have a seance, it'll be fun, sip the wine and everything. And there was a lot of people swore by, like, I talked to my great aunt Bethany from 1743 and things of that nature. But there was a lot of tricks, a lot of Underhanded, under the table
Chicanery?
kind of things. Chicanery is a good word
Chicanery?
because that's probably one of the
like
words
it.
that would have been used at the
Chicanery?
time. Maybe even shenanigans, but I
Mm.
don't know where that restaurant is. So, that's a deep cut. I can tell you. Took you a minute.
It's a deep cut. It's a deep cut. It's got all the goofy stuff on the walls and the mozzarella sticks.
But what exactly is a seance? Now, I'm going to get into some boring stuff at first. Some
I take
language
a
stuff
nap?
for people who are not into it. It's
Can I
only
get a
going to be
nap
like
in?
2 minutes. So if you can do a power nap, just get it in and out.
Listen, I'm a dad, and so are you, so we can nap.
I can't nap anymore. I could, but I would never get back up. I'd stay asleep for like 12 hours. She'd set the house on fire.
What is a sacrifice or what?
Yes.
It's just a typical day in Canton, Ohio.
Or Akron.
organs.
No, I'm kidding. Sorry.
The word seance comes from a French word for session, or from Old French, literally to sit. And classically, a true seance requires you to be sitting down. Now, a lot of people these days who are still into that kind of thing do it standing in front of crowds of people or sometimes small groups. But in order to be a real seance, everybody should be sitting. That was something that came in handy for some of the chicanery later, as far as lifting the table and things of that nature, which we will get to. Now, in English, they specifically started to apply the word seance for when people would meet up and specifically gather to try to get messages from ghosts or from their departed relatives or spirits in the spirit world. And some of the earliest published conversations, supposedly from spirits to a medium, showed up in a book called Dialogues of the Dead by first Baron George Littleton in England in 1760. Among the notable spirits that he supposedly spoke with are Peter the Great, Pericles, an unnamed North American savage, which would be a Native American, because of course, that's what they call people. William Penn and Christina, Queen of Sweden. Stephen has a comment, so I'm going to let you go ahead. I'm going to let you put your comment in. You're excited.
Christina Aguilera.
No, not really. I don't think she was Queen of Sweden.
No, see,
I mean, the hips don't
what?
lie, but it's not the same.
That's not.
That's Shakira anyway. Because I lied.
This
obviously.
show sucks.
I don't know my pop references well enough for the I don't know.
Okay, let's just get back to seances. Steven,
Back to seances.
don't ever make that joke again. It was garbage.
If you derail me too far, then I'll never recover.
It's just the one comment.
But seances became very popular with the founding of a religion known as spiritualism. Now, that was something that I was interested in finding out in my research, because I didn't know spiritualism was actually considered a religion. I thought it was just a philosophy, a school of thought, but it is a federally recognized religion. You can actually, if you're trying to get a job or whatever, and they give you those questionnaires, some of them, not everybody's supposed to ask you anymore, but some places will still ask you, what religion are you? Because they have to make allowances for days, holy days, and various things like that. You can put spiritualism on there. I don't know if that gets you anything, because there's no, like, Christianity has Sundays, Muslims have Ramadan and various things, but spiritualism, I don't think they have specific days. I'll have to look into it, though, because I was surprised.
You got to remember, too, spiritualism was like Helena Blavatsky and a lot of that more, how do I put this?
Esoteric.
No, that's right, but
tricksters,
racially toned philosophy, because you got to be careful.
The Aryan philosophies and some of the other things,
the Vril and stuff like that. Yeah. So a lot of spirituality kind of funneled off into like that kind of stuff too. So I think that's what got a lot of it its bad name, is that it funneled into that sort of, we're the superior race coming to save the earth. I don't think it was necessarily there was an inferior race, but they just believed in a superior race. I think Hitler
Right.
and all them is the one who did that. But originally, it was like this superior Aryan race that was going to come and save mankind. Basically, I'm very much not doing that whole concept justice when I tell you
Right.
this.
Right. There's a lot more
So,
to that, although a lot of that is kind of outside the scope of this particular show, but it might be something to. We've talked about it before, and it might be something to revisit in the near future if we keep on some of these similar topics, because it is super interesting and it did influence a lot of politics
Yeah.
during a very important time period, especially throughout Europe and then bleeding over into the United States.
Well, like you said, it was all, all the concept of spiritualism, right? Bled in
it's very
everywhere.
broad.
Because everybody, like, it was almost, when it hit America, it was almost like a fad, if you will. Everybody was having seance parties, and everybody, like you said, had everybody over, and then they hired a medium, and then it was more like a game show, more so than it was like a spiritual endeavor. It was like, dude, you want to get some bros together tonight and drink some natty lights and do a seance?
Have a seance, lift the table, man. Yeah.
Let's see if Derek will hit us up, dude. Anyways, I made the bad joke this time. I'll leave.
We'll cut it out in post. Before we get into the actual types of seances and what qualifies more and what qualifies less, some of the best known series of seances that have been researched were actually done by the wife of a president of the United States, specifically Mary Todd Lincoln, who was the wife of Abraham Lincoln. And they actually had these seances in the White House, which may explain a few things about whatever came after over all the years. So who knows? I mean, I don't know. Maybe the White House itself.
We don't want to get shadow banned.
I'm not dropping any names. I'm just saying the White House itself may be a little bit. Although they do redecorate it every time somebody new gets in there, so maybe that helps. Maybe that's like a cleansing. But I doubt it.
Not.
I feel like there's something, we all know about the symbology in DC too. So, now in 1887, a commission called the Siebert Commission. It was a group of faculty members at the University of Pennsylvania between 1884 and 1887. They investigated a number of respected, or at the time, respected spiritualist mediums, and they uncovered quite a bit of fraud or suspected fraud in every case that they examined. Now, does that mean?
Can you spell that name for me?
Seybert.
Because I thought it was Cybert when I read it, but that's fine.
It could be. I didn't check up on the pronunciations.
You're fine. You're fine. I was like, is it Seabird? Is it Cybert? That's why I was like, I wasn't sure. My bad. Carry on, please.
Well, as an American who doesn't really pay attention to other languages because I'm ignorant and stupid, I look at everything phonetically. So I don't actually take the time to learn them. I'm sure there's probably a better pronunciation than that. But anytime I pronounce something on the show,
way to say it.
That's
I'm not learning your stupid language. I'll pronounce it how I want.
That's how I approach languages. So, now I've got to recover here. But they did find an awful lot of what they said was fraud. Now, the question I have, not that I'm defending the seances per se, because there was a lot of fraud going on, but when they say they found fraud in every single case, I don't know. I think there could be some wiggle room on the other side. But again, this is the typical science versus spirit kind of conversation, and there's usually not a lot of give and take in there for most people. So I can see where they were going from. Before we get too far into it, some opinions. Stephen, Do you think that seances are at all effective, or that they have any potential to be effective to contact the spirit world or the spirits of the departed?
I personally think that it's more about the people's intentions and their energies and their own thoughts and beliefs rather than it is actually contacting any particular thing. And I can relate that back to my thoughts on tulpas, because you might they might actually be talking to an entity, but as some people have suggested over time, it could be a demon, it could be a spirit, but maybe a different spirit than the one they think they're talking to, or it could be a tulpa. There's many different things it could be. It could just be a feedback loop of you speaking to yourself internally within your mind because you've psyched yourself up and made yourself so excited for this to happen that you just like placebo affected into believing that it happened.
Good points. Good points. Rob, same question.
I need to ask you a question first.
Shoot.
What was the size of the people that they sampled? And where did they go to? Did they go all over the world, or did they just go over the United States?
Let me take a look here.
Because you need a good sample size to make that claim that, if you went to 5 houses and there's 100 houses that are practicing it,
That's
5
not
of
a
those
good
houses,
claim.
they could have found 100% proof that it was a hoax. But if they haven't visited the other ones, especially in places where the energy would be a lot different, i.e. murders,
Lilydale?
i.e. like if you would do a seance maybe over the Vatican because of the pure power that has, I wonder if that would change the results. So that's why I asked you, where did they do this
That is
at?
a good question. According to the notes here, the commission, they didn't sample large groups of people. They would approach individuals who said that they were good at particular parts of it. Like, for example, on slate writing, which is a spirit supposedly guiding somebody's hand. Spirit writing, basically, guiding your hand into writing things out. They investigated 2 people, Mrs. S.E. Patterson and Dr. Henry Slade, who were both, quote, widely respected practitioners of slate writing. And from there, they did the same system for spirit wrappings, movements of objects, spirit photography. So they did not really approach it from a scientific perspective in sampling a large group of people, but at the same time, I have to wonder how many people claimed to be mediums at the time and what the actual candidates might have been. The report itself, which again came out in 1887, it was angrily denounced by a large number of spiritualists, and there proved to be no sentiment for the commission's continued existence, and it quietly disbanded. So they put out this report, pissed off a lot of people, and then they're like, well, whatever. And then they took it apart and we're done with it. So,
Okay. So what you're saying, okay, where was it sampled? Does it say what country, what area? That's what I'm curious to know. And I'll
see.
explain that in a minute.
Well, Henry Slade was a medium who lived and practiced in both Europe and North America.
And he was
He was one of the 2 people for the slate writing.
Was he the creator of this thing?
No, he was just, again, one of the more widely respected practitioners.
So they created a group to go and debunk these things, right?
Basically, yeah.
Who was the head of that debunking committee?
Okay. Let's see. It doesn't say the leader.
Okay.
It says that among the more notable members were the university provost, who was a head of the university, William Pepper. He was a physician. A paleontologist, Joseph Leidy. A Shakespearean scholar. Oh, here. Okay. This guy served as the chairman.
Okay.
A Shakespearean scholar, Horace Howard Furness.
Okay.
He was an American Shakespearean scholar, which is an interesting choice.
Yeah.
To lead this kind of a
agree.
commission.
And where did this commission operate? Does it say like their jurisdiction? Not
This
jurisdiction. I
was-
think that's the proper terminology.
This was the University of Pennsylvania.
So we're talking Pennsylvania. So does it ever talk about them going out of country?
Not specifically, although I
Okay.
have to assume for some of these people that investigated, they would have had to go visit some places. But I'm assuming most of the time they interviewed people who were close to home, so to speak, which
Okay.
again kind of throws
Kind of skews the
the
results.
whole
of it.
thing
Yeah.
into suspicion.
Now, what was the question you asked, Stephen? That you wanted to ask me? Oh, energies and seances. Right?
Seances, like, is it possible? Like, what do you feel about the possibility of a seance or anything being able to contact the so-called spirits of the departed?
So I am the firm believer, and everybody knows this. I don't believe we're here when we die. I don't believe that we are on this plane. I don't believe we're on this plane. So I think what they're tapping into is something negative, or it's something evil, or it's just something that is other dimensional. I don't necessarily believe that it's anybody that we will ever have known. I can't contact my great grandfather. That's not how any of that works. My grandfather is already embedded in my DNA. You know what I mean? So no, I don't. I don't believe in seances. In the sense of being able to call back somebody that had passed, because that just doesn't jive with me. But I think if you get enough people in one room and they latch on to an idea or a thought, and they can create something, but not like a tulpa, just almost like a mind over matter type of situation, as we've seen with the Kaaba and the people walking around it. And there's an energy that is buzzing around there that scientists have measured.
Mhm.
And so I think if you get enough people, enough energy, it could make something happen. But do I think it's your old Uncle Joe from 1820? Impossible. I don't believe it. That's me personally. Like I said, fire off angry comments in the chat, but I've never once. And just a sidebar here before we jump back into it, I will prove to you why I don't think that we are here. Now, the one thing I didn't say is spirits could be the energy runoff from when we die. So much like when you put gasoline in a car, it burns it, fumes come out, basically the same aspect you can use in this situation. So that's what it is to me. And whatever's left behind is just your energy burn off. So it's like you, and it can still do things that you can do in a smaller sense. That's why whenever they get people's names or they ever get people's, ghost things, whatever, what have you, it's always very monotone. It's never excited. If it's angry, it's usually a demon or usually something that you shouldn't be messing with in the first place. But all of the things they recorded have been disembodied voices because the person isn't there, but that energy is still seeking that person until it finally dissipates. But sometimes energy, like nuclear energy, takes a very long time to burn off. There'd be many half-lives as you would put it into a nuclear perspective, but the human energy, and I think that's dependent upon the amount of suffering that one endures. That's why you feel it at places like insane asylums, or you feel in places like prisons, because there's a darker energy to that, and usually a lighter energy, you don't feel that presence. So anyways, didn't mean to steamroll the show, but I think that's very important to consider when we talk about seances. So I think a lot of times seances are just a mind over matter aspect.
And that was kind of a loaded question for you because we've talked about ghosts and spirits before, and your thoughts on that are pretty well known by this point. But just in case anybody else hadn't heard about them yet, and just to keep it within the level of conversation.
And let me just say too, this isn't any disrespect to people who believe that. I have come up with a hypothesis. I want to say hypotenuse, but that's not the word I'm looking for. A hypothesis that I have kind of time tested and just see where it's led. Does that mean I know 100%? No. But do I 100% believe that it's, your energy? Yes. I don't think it's I think that moves on. I think that piece of you belongs to the creator and it goes back to where it came from. So that's all. Continue.
And
Pretend like I'm not here.
Can I make one more comment?
Steven, I saw you raising your finger, ready to interject.
That's fine. What's up?
So when you were talking about the nuclear energy and it taking a really long time to burn off and disappear, dissipate, however you want to word that, I got curious, so I looked it up real quick for you, and it said, and the quick Google search told me it will typically take approximately 500 years for nuclear energy to burn off. Just as a reference point.
Think about a human. Think about how powerful the act of dying is. Like, we look at dying in the sense of like, they're here one day, they're gone the next, right? But the process of dying is literally your soul leaving your body
and returning to
your yes, if you believe that. I do, but some people don't. But if you think about the process that the body goes through,
the energy, the metamorphosis,
the decay,
the changing, the decay, all of that, and you've lived, let's do an average death is like, 80, 90 years old, because a lot of people live longer these days than they used to. Let's say 80. You've lived 80 years, memories, good, bad,
it's a lot of
depending
data
on the trauma, a lot of things that have impacted your life. So when you are that aged, you have more energy, but I don't mean in terms of like physical energy. You've built up more energy living in the world and understanding your place in it, whether that be good, bad, whatever, what have you. And then when you die, all of that, everything that has been bundled together in you releases. And so there's a powerful act there. It's very alchemical. I'll say that much. It's a very alchemical thing. And so for me,
the magnum opus.
That idea, that concept of how powerful death is, not what we think of death as, right? If one of us dies, we mourn, we got to keep going. But the process and the build up and everything that goes with it, and then it's just that it's like
a nuclear
explosion. Grows in so much of a bubble, and then finally it just has to go, and then it goes. And there's and I think science is, I don't know if this is true, but they measured a body when it died, and it weighed less when the person died.
They void their bowels. I know that.
That's not.
Well, there's the physical stuff. I mean, there's always, you've got
the soul
breakdown.
Thing. Yeah, I've heard
you've
about
got the breakdown of the physical parts of the body too, which is energy also escaping. There is a massive amount of energy release from a body over a protracted period of time. And plus, when we bury people with certain chemicals, not like the Egyptians with the embalming fluids as much, but we still do a level of that to preserve things, then put them in a nice airtight box, and it takes even longer for that energy to get out, to go anywhere. So just imagine going through a cemetery and thinking about, and this is a little bit morbid, I get it, but I mean, think about the number of people who are buried there and how long it would take for all of that material to break down. That's all that energy releasing. That energy is not going to stop moving from those bodies until those bodies are gone. And it takes an awful long time. Right. So,
well, think about it like this. How many people here have been to a funeral? How many people have seen the body in the casket? Close up. Tell me they don't look, the energy is gone. Different. Yeah. I can't explain it to you, but there's the energy that you saw them when they were alive isn't there.
They look like an inanimate object.
They look like a wax figure almost.
Yes.
And the way they're just sitting, I'm not going like that, by the way. I'm good. But I think, that energy, like we just talked about, dissipates. And energy cannot be destroyed. It just
science
continues on.
in a different form.
And that's all I'm saying. I've hijacked this show enough with all this intelligence, and there's going to be a quiz on this next week.
That's good though.
I'll
That's
ace
good.
I think so.
Now a quick note, if anybody hears it, there's fireworks somewhere in the town here because there's people celebrate. They're celebrating Juneteenth. For anybody out there who celebrates, that's what they're doing here. I don't, but not in a disrespectful way. I don't want to.
Oh, it's very disrespectfully said.
Some people might feel kind of like, well, why don't you?
Because it's America. You don't have to celebrate anybody's holidays, all right?
Yeah, and I don't celebrate any holidays at all. So, I mean, that kind of makes sense to me.
Freedom of holiday celebration. There you
I
go.
celebrate Christmas. Do I celebrate the 4th of July? Not really. There you go.
I celebrate
Christmas, fireworks
even though I don't believe in it.
So, for anybody who hears like booms and pops and stuff, there's no rolling gunfights in my neighborhood today. Not today.
Yeah.
There have been before. But Steven was watching on Stream once.
Oh, yeah. That was crazy.
I just can't speak anymore today. I'm going to get back on topic.
Like you had
back
to get
on topic so I can speak about something. What types of seances are there? There are a couple there are a few different types that are all considered in the same field. There's only one or two that are actually considered actual seances. And again, a true seance involves everybody being seated. But as far as the overall attempting to speak with the spirits of the departed, there are generally accepted 4 different types. The first of which is from the actual spiritualism religion, and it's also in a religion that's an offshoot of that called divine metaphysics, which might be something interesting to Stephen. Stephen might be into divine metaphysics. That's officially recognized in the United States, by the way. So if you're looking for a religion to write down on that paper, divine metaphysics, it sounds good. They actually have services, like church services, where they attempt to communicate with what they consider living personalities in the spirit world, because they see the soul as a living being, not as someone who's died. They see the body as having died, but the living person having gone on to a spirit world of some kind, where they can still be communicated with. But they don't call it a seance because it's kind of not really offensive, but it's kind of like
it just doesn't fit anymore, and it's
call it
insulting in a way.
Yeah, they kind of like, no, we're not doing that, because seances have been identified with fraud and
nobody
things
would take you seriously.
Yeah.
They see it as receiving messages, is what they call it. Receiving messages from the beyond, receiving messages from the spirits, and from this cat who's shouting at me all of a sudden. They usually take place in well-lit spiritualist churches or outdoors at spiritualist camps. There's a place called Lily Dale in upstate New York, and there's a place called Camp Casadega in Florida. So there's actually big places.
We should go.
I'd be interested to see what it was like.
Yeah, we should see if we can get in contact with them. Go up to the one in upstate New York.
I have family in upstate New York, so I could see what I could do about that for a future trip. To be honest, to be easy.
We should 100. I've never been up there, so we should do it.
It's beautiful out there. I've seen the pictures. My cousin Luke, his family lives up in upstate New York. So
nice, dude. Yeah, we should definitely. You should definitely see what you can do with that. And then, because I have a fantastic thing I'm doing that would work perfect with that.
I'll fire off some emails and things. The trick is trying to get the time away, but we're earning vacation time now. We're earning vacation time. Any day now, I'll have some time to do something.
Any day now.
Any day now.
Any day now.
But in those places, an actual ordained minister or gifted contact medium will relate messages from spirit personalities to those here in the physical form. And they call them message services or demonstrations of the continuity of life, which is a pretty cumbersome kind of phrase, but it sounds good.
That's what they do.
And they're open to the public, so we could just stroll in. We could just go. We don't have to like be invited. We could just go.
We should just stroll.
And in some churches, the message service is preceded by a healing service involving some form of faith healing. So you can kind of see that there's a little bit of
That's where they get you.
really about
that's
some
where
of
they
that
get you.
because
like a timeshare.
we've had faith healers here in Ohio. We've had some
Sure
famous
have.
ones. The one just recently in the last few years he passed, didn't he?
And somebody here tested that spirit, and the spirit failed.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you guys about that sometime. But yeah, he died, and he was a PDF file.
Yeah, he had some things that he shouldn't have been doing. He needed to take a seat in a hotel room somewhere.
Yeah, several.
So that's one of the 4 types. The second type is more what we think about when we think about a medium these days, a seance. It's stage mediumship, which is still kind of This is nowadays where you get Long Island medium with the big hair. No, I think your cousin Roy from Alabama. He's talking to me through you. He wants you to put money in the bank for me.
We remember John Edwards. I said somebody's dad begins with a B. Which B? Bob.
Barry.
Yes, Bob. Do you have a Bob? Bob. There's a Bob. Your uncle wanted me to tell you that you owe him $20 and to give it to me, and I will give it to your uncle. They're frauds. You know, I'm okay. I'm sorry.
But that's basically what it is. Stage mediumship is a person who claims to be a medium. They give basically a performance on stage trying to contact the spirits with audience members seated in front of them. Not really a literal seance because they aren't seated. And that's what we see more common these days as far as, and you know what, when I see that more common, it's actually less common than when I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, you would see the infomercials. You would see the stuff for
Miss Cleo,
same basic thing. There'd be these people who were famous for being up in front of groups, and they'd say, "Yes, you need to call the 900 number because you had to spend money to do it
and receive answers." Only
and
$98 a minute.
1-900-655-5555.
A lot of times, these places will have you pre-register. So that they have certain bits of information from you. They have your name, they have your address. They don't necessarily have your credit card information, but they can look up public record of your name very easily because they're making a ton of money. They can pay for that from places that require payments, and they can look up your relatives. They can look up different things. Oh, I see there's an obituary for so-and-so that you were related to. I bet you missed them. I'm going to talk about them on stage and get you hooked.
Or what they could have did too is have people paid. Like, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is going to be an act. We're going to go
common
over
practice.
this. Yeah.
Very common.
Yeah.
Having a plant in the audience or more than one.
Yeah.
It just depends on the size of the crowd. You can't do it with a super small crowd, but if you have a big crowd, you can really easily get away with it.
If you had like 20 to 50, because too large is too large. It's going to be, you know what I mean? You're like, that guy.
Now, the next one is more what we consider when we think about the old days of them sitting in Victorian times around a table. This is leader-assisted seances, generally conducted by small groups of people seated around a table in a dark or semi-dark room, and the person who's leading it is typically asserted to be a medium, and they may or may not go into a trance, which allows them to communicate with other spirits through his or her body. This is where they say, I'm sensing Uncle Bob. He wants to talk to you. Hey, those professional mourners were really great that you got for me when I died. You know, so, and they might change their voice.
That was great improv.
Things.
It was good improv.
Yeah. I'm connecting old episodes. We're continuity.
Right.
We're keeping continuity.
Right. It's the Uncanny verse.
They would communicate through the medium, or they may also attempt through automatic writing, which we talked to, where the medium holds a pen or a pencil and they don't look at what they're writing. They just write things that the spirit compels them to write. Now, if you've ever tried this, because I have, just for fun, if you've tried to write things while your eyes are closed, it's a mess. It's just all over the place. But if you practiced it enough, if you kept on going often enough, you could probably do pretty well with the handwriting. You could probably make it look pretty good. And some of these people were very talented in these areas. They would also do numbered raps, which is not like the raps that some of us are familiar with, but tapping the table, where they would say yes or no, please answer. If it's a yes, we'll answer with a rap on the table, knock, knock. Or, and frequently they would do under the table where you couldn't see it, so you wouldn't know who particularly was knocking.
But what if it was like a really dope beat and they just started going in?
The spirit wants to make a track with you. They want to collab right now.
Spirit said bars.
But and then of course levitation of the table was a part of that too. And frequently the easiest way to do that was for the medium to just carefully lift the table with their fingertips because the table was light.
Yeah.
Or they could have a contraption of some sort with strings and whatnot to help kind of lift it up. If they were trying to go like, oh, the spirit's talking to me, my hands are free, it can't be me, the table is lifting.
Oh, bars.
So
nice.
So those are what we consider more typical of a seance, especially kind of the more fraudulent kind.
Right.
Other times they may use, we're going to get into some tools in a little bit here. We're going pretty far on time already, but we're going to hit that in a minute anyway. And then the last version is, the third one is informal social, which is when a group of people just get together without a trained medium and try to contact a spirit. They will frequently use tools, which we'll talk about in a minute, like Ouija boards or Magic 8-Ball or whatever to try to accomplish things. And then the final is the true spiritualist, where everybody involved is supposedly a psychic or a medium. Like they all met at a conference and said, let's all have a seance together.
They all fight?
And they sit in a circle on the floor and they all attempt to communicate with the spirits. I'd have to wonder how much outdoing of each other they try to do. Like, well, my spirit was so-and-so, and they said your spirit sucks.
Alexander the Great is here, and he said,
yes, well, I had Benjamin Franklin. Okay,
so,
we're done.
But out of those different forms of seances, Rob, which ones of those, and I'm probably pretty certain of the answer already, but which ones of those have you heard of, and which ones of those do you think had any possibility of success at all, if any?
Are we talking success in the sense that it proves that there's a spirit, or just like fooling people?
Success as if maybe you could actually contact something, whether it was just an energy or whether it was an actual spirit.
Well, demons are known to be able to move things and be able to manipulate objects. So I could see certain things happening, the table moving, maybe levitating. Because once again, you don't know what you're playing with. I mean, you get enough people that can focus that kind of energy into pulling something from a void. You have to wonder what comes out of that void from them pulling into it, because they're using energy. This is something that we need to understand. If people are concentrating hard, that's a form of energy that they are concentrating that hard. So who knows what they are dealing with? Obviously, I think some of them are. I think automatic writing is just like, if I could do this. If I do this every day for 4 hours, at some point I'm going to be good enough to compose whole sentences. So that one's kind of out there. See, this is tough only because I can do these tricks.
Mm-hmm.
These are all things I could do if I put my time and effort into doing it. there's nothing that you mentioned where it's not something I could do. You know what I mean? And that's what does it. You know, I think there's seances where they have contacted something. I don't think it's the person, but something. But there's a lot of other things involved in those. There's mirrors involved in those, and mirrors are very, very interesting in terms of what they can supposedly do. So like automatic writing is out for me. Lifting the table once again, even if, like you said, you had the contraption, if you didn't, all you need is somebody else that was in on it with you to be able to lift the table. And people are like, oh, the table. And then you just split the cut afterwards with that person. So that one's out of there too. What was the other one?
Well, we talk about the actual spiritualists in a religious form where they stand in front of a group, like in a church setting.
I think that one has a little bit more power because you're pulling sway as like a charismatic figure, right? So everybody's giving their energy to you. And I think that when people do that, it sort of dumbs them down, right? Because they're just focused on you. They think that you are like almost like, I don't want to say the Beatles, but like that kind of worship, right?
The trance kind of sets in, and
yes, and then you could be what's the word I'm looking for? When you're hypnotized, recommendations. You can be, recommended to act a certain way, but that's more of like almost a cult of personality type of aspect, right? It's almost like a cult too, in a way. And then there's like the psychic battle, which is hilarious. I would love to sit in on that one. Obviously I don't buy that one. The one with the medium could be fake as well. See, these are all hard things to consider because they're all for show. You know what I mean? They're all for, let's get everybody together on a Saturday night and see if we can do this thing. It's not a personal group that's trying to figure out if they can conversate with the dead. There's no rationality. It's all just parlor tricks. And that for me is why a lot of these just don't reign home. I would say the traditional one in the sense that you don't know what you're doing. But like when you talk about getting on stage or you talking about all the psychics at once, it's more like a peeing contest. You know what I mean? Between the psychics and then you've got your charismatic figure. So if I had to like pick one that I think would most identify with maybe having a slight chance to be real, would be the one in the home where everybody's seated, where they have an actual medium. And that's where I could see something happening. Because like I said, you don't know what you're contacting when you open those doors. And we know this. When you open certain doors, certain things come out of those doors. And you have to understand how to do that. So,
Steven, same question. Do you think any of these supposed events that contact the spirits, do you think any of them have any validity to them? Do you think they can actually do what they say, or are they all fraud?
Well, I think the most obvious fraud is clearly, like you briefly mentioned earlier, the Fox sisters with their, tapping and table tapping. So like your standard seance, I suppose, would be the easiest to fake. But one that that I actually do believe in to a point, unless someone can prove it entirely wrong or entirely true, one way or the other, I'm kind of torn on this one because there's a case with the automatic writing. Because there was this man named Edgar Casey, 1877 to 1945, who claimed while they were in a self-induced trance, dictated thousands of readings, including detailed medical diagnosis and treatments, despite having no formal medical training. And the strange thing is, the medical knowledge that they, dispensed out during these sessions was actually turned out to be true medical knowledge and saved people's lives.
Now, I do want to say before he gets into the next thing, Edgar Casey is one of those outliers. There's always an outlier. He's an outlier to me because there's certain things that he could do that were kind of hard to explain. You know, it's almost like I think there's these once in a lifetime figures that come around that know certain things, but they don't do it in a sense where they're trying to gain monetary gain. Because I don't think Casey was looking for monetary gain. I think he just did it because there was some things, like I said, that just doesn't make sense to me.
And then there's also Aleister Crowley, who claimed to receive the Book of Law via automatic
That's a whole
writing.
nother.
You had
from
him. You
the
had
Iwas.
John D. John D.
Yeah,
had
John
the
D.
Enochian
Yeah.
language,
Yeah.
supposedly,
Yeah.
and
Someone named Helene Smith in the late 1800s was a medium
Mhm.
who entered trances and wrote in Martian language, which was later interpreted by Jungian psychologists as deep unconscious symbolism.
Yeah, but you got to be careful with that kind of stuff
Yeah.
because
You can make
interpreted
up your own
as
interpretations.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but other stuff is just like I said. I think there's once in a lifetime people that come through, and it's all like the simulation thing's starting to make more and more sense. I'm kidding, but yeah, I'm sorry. Continue.
But that's a good point, and I had intended, because we're kind of running short on time now. We're getting pretty lengthy in here, to go through a lot of the very notable mediums like Edgar Casey and the Fox sisters.
Mhm.
I'm glad you mentioned them, so I can make sure that we mention them here for anybody who wants to look them up afterwards. I'm not going to go into depth on tonight's show because I have a few more things to talk about before we finish, and I think it'd be a 2-hour episode if we kept
Could do
on
a
going
part
into some
two.
of it. Possibly, we'll think about that in the near future, or it can always show up as a next episode of the Intern's Oddities from Around the World.
I'm definitely going to mention Houdini.
But where we're going next from here is some of the things that have been used during seances, some of the tools and some of the items that they have used to try to assist them. Some of them obviously are more, okay, I see what you're doing there, smoke and mirrors. Literally smoke and mirrors, and some of them aren't. So we're going to get into that a little bit. The most famous item that people will use, especially in informal gatherings for their own personal stances, is something that we've discussed here on the channel before, and it's Ouija boards. Ouija boards are used a lot, and we've had a lot of strong opinions about that. A lot of people, especially in the comments, have said, "Hey, Ouija boards open up doors to places you shouldn't go. They bring in beings that you shouldn't talk to."
Yep.
My personal thought on that, we're not going to spend too much time on it because we've all talked about it before. We've all really given our opinions on it. But my personal thought is more that it's another one of those self-fulfilling prophecy kind of things.
Yep.
You start using it, you start expecting certain things, and even if you feel like nothing's ever going to happen, there's always that little thought in the back of your subconscious that, like, we use the thing, what if it does? That little bit of curiosity, and that's all a thought needs to take up residence in your brain and to keep your brain thinking about that and devoting energy to it and perhaps causing things to happen based on that. So even if it isn't something so-called demonic or spiritual or whatever, the energy of you just thinking about it, whether consciously or not,
The law of
is enough
attraction.
to keep it going.
Yes.
But they use Ouija boards. They also use the slates, which are for the automatic writing, are supposed to be made. They're like chalk slates where you can use chalk and they can be erased and whatnot. The seance tables. This is something I mentioned earlier. They were lightweight, so that they could rotate, float, or levitate when spirits were present. They're lightweight, so somebody could manipulate them.
Nobody thought this. Nobody thought, man, this table's light. It's easy to move.
Because spirits, they can't lift that much because they're spirits, so you have to make the table light for them.
They got to work
make
at
it easy for them.
My spirit's gonna have some gains.
They also used spirit cabinets, which were portable closets into which a medium was placed, sometimes bound with ropes, in order to prevent them from manipulating the various aforementioned tools.
So,
which made it much more likely that they would need somebody else
in the audience
outside
to let them out of the closet.
Well, that too, but also to lift the table for them because they can't do it. But those are some of the various tools and things. Also, the crystal ball was a thing. They got that from gypsy
Gypsies.
culture and
Yeah,
from
gypsy culture.
the earlier medieval kind of
which I think
the water pools.
I think they I don't know, the gypsies, we should do a episode on them at some point.
That'd be
Because like there's a lot of spiritual aspects
They
of
have
the
a bit more
gypsies.
legitimacy also.
Yes, agreed.
The thing about
Agreed.
gypsies was that they did a lot to swindle people because they knew
Yeah.
people didn't believe in what they could do.
Right.
But there was a lot of things that potentially, maybe, that they could do.
Yes.
It's kind of like
yes.
Native Americans. Native Americans
Yes.
also at a point when they figured out that the people coming in were just, oh, can you take me on a vision quest? Can you tell me what the spirits are saying? They'd be like, sure, give me $5.
Right.
You know?
Give me $10.
Put that in, put $15 in my hand, and I'll tell you whatever you want.
Right.
You know,
and I'll give
so
you some of this ayahuasca. You'll see your dad.
many cultures got to that point where ignorant people came through demanding to know secrets that they had no need to know or that they didn't deserve to know. I'm like, all right, sure. You pay me a little bit, I'll tell you what you want to know. And it didn't matter if it was true or not. It just had to be true enough for you to believe it.
Because they didn't know how to do it. The Native Americans knew how to do it. So you could just kind of say, yeah, put some sugar on your shoe at 6 o'clock in the morning.
So there's, and some mediums also have used tarot cards for this kind of thing to talk to spirits specifically. Instead of just making a reading from the cards, they will say, oh, the spirits are guiding me to this card, which tells you this, and this, which tells you this. I'm a fan to a point of tarot readings. I have 2 decks of tarot cards myself, but I don't whip them out every single day being like, what should I have for breakfast today? Not. Oh, okay. The cards tell me. I use them rarely for my own purposes, and I think about them real heavily before I act on any of it because they're just cardboard. At the end of the day, it's just cardboard. You have to either, it's like anything else. If you're going to ask something to help you make a decision, you still have to rely on your own brain to make that decision.
Yes, sir. 100%.
So,
and that's the thing. And once again, not to interrupt, I'm being the intent. You don't know what your brain is doing. And I think your brain is really in control of the tarot cards. I think your brain is like, oh, so the cards are gonna, oh, you know what I mean? I don't think there's any legitimacy to tarot cards. I just don't. And I've had readings done for me, all that jazz. I would be a hypocrite to say I didn't, but they didn't legitimize anything that I was concerned about. That's not an insult. That's just how I took them. You know, people were like, hey, be careful this week. Okay, I'll be careful this week. But I was careful last week and the week before that week. You know what I mean? So it's like,
always careful. I'm always careful.
I'm always careful. So that's why a lot of those don't make sense to me. But I get what you're saying because maybe they can align a form of energy because manifestation and everything else. So I get it. Sorry, continue.
But it's a good point. It's a good point to bring up about using various tools to make any sort of decision or to feel like you're talking to anything that's beyond right in front of your face. And with that being said, Stephen, do you think any of these, do you think things like Ouija boards, tarot cards, crystal balls, etc., is it at all possible that they can contact something beyond here, or do you think it's all in the mind?
Yes, both. I think it's possible that they can contact something beyond here through different means via different people, but at the same time, I do also believe that it's all in their mind. And what I mean by that is I do believe that they can contact different things through different mediums, but I don't believe it's actually using a crystal ball or using the tarot cards that they're able to contact those other entities. I think they're able to contact them simply because of their mind alone.
And the item is basically just for show.
Yeah, it's like a conduit.
Like I said, my only counterpoint to that is,
and I don't mean ghosts.
The scientific material like crystal or something they use has properties. So my thing is, I wonder if they know the properties of said object so they can manipulate said object. That's really it for me. Because crystal balls are a funny thing. We should do an episode on those at some point. But crystal balls are odd. Ouija boards. My only thing about Ouija boards are that if nobody knew what a Ouija board was for, would it harm them in the same way we know how a Ouija board works? So that's my 2 cents. Take it for that.
That's a good point, because we assume that everyone knows how things work, because that's a typical, Western idea that, hey, everybody must know about this. But it's the same concept of, if you went to visit Robert the dog and there weren't any signs around telling you that he was cursed, there was nothing around saying anything about what he's supposedly done to people, and you went in there and you saw this thing, would it affect you if you made fun of it? Would it do anything? Would it actually make a difference?
Or if you took a picture of it, because you have to ask him to take a picture. If
It's
none
the
of
same
that was there
question.
and it was just the doll, you see what I'm saying? I agree with you. Like a lot of that, I think, is it's already been implanted.
Yeah.
So like, oh, you're cursed. So when you leave there, you're attracting that bad energy, or you're changed your for other folks, you've changed your mindset to be more aware of the bad things that happen. I don't know. That's I would need all of that removed, just the doll there, like sitting on a rocking chair, no caged in, because once again, why is it caged?
Yeah.
Why is it in a cage? Why is it in a cage? So I get it. That is my biggest thing too. Like I would love to get a sample size of people who don't know who that is and do that, and then measure that against people who have and what happens and things like that.
And that's an idea that we've brought up before too, because we've brought up cursed objects, and we've talked about Ouija boards, and we've talked about how if you did not have any idea of the lore or anything about something that could potentially affect you, you were just told, this is how this works. Do you want to try it? Would your mind be open to that thing happening? Would it lodge in your subconscious like in other things? And that's I think it's a worthwhile experiment. The trick is, especially with something like supposedly Robert the doll, not to get too far from the topic, but it's the same, it's related. If something bad started to happen to the person in the experiment, is that your fault? Or is that just, it's a tough area, because we're programmed to believe that something bad could happen. Even now, like I talk about it, because I'm a hard ass, and I'm like, oh, I can do whatever I want. That doll ain't going to bother me. But I still have the idea from the shows I've watched that it has supposedly done things to people. Even if I don't feel like I don't believe it, there's something in my subconscious that tells me that this did things to different people, regardless of how much I believe it.
And you have to wonder how many of those people may have sent in something fake for attention.
Yeah.
You gotta, like, there's so many avenues. Like, my truck caught on fire. But
obviously it's the doll.
Did you just get a check last month and they said you need to get your gas lines repaired? Stuff like that. You know what I mean? Humans fear what they don't understand. Yeah, that's true. That's a true point. Anyways, go ahead.
And I think things like the Ouija board and that sort of thing are kind of the same way. But finding a way to test it and not have it come back to you again.
Yeah.
Because even then, about what's been said about it. So if you're the controller for the test, you have to find somebody else who's ignorant of it. You have to find somebody who, like, here, take this, give it to your friend. Have your friend who's never heard of it do it, because you've never heard of it. And then the two of you come back and tell me what happened. Like, you can't be involved with it, but then you're like, you have no way to influence any of it. And then So, but we're running on time, so I'm gonna wind it down a little bit. Like I said, I did want to get into some of the more famous practitioners, but we're not going to really get into that this week. I encourage everybody out there to do some research on various mediums from the past. Not Long Island medium with the big hair, because she's obviously a complete fraud. But
I can't believe you said that about me. It's so mean and rude.
But you don't hear about her anymore. I mean, she's not around anymore.
Nobody buys into it. You don't hear about John Edwards either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, seances. They were big in Victorian times. We still have a form of them today because people still. There's a place somewhere in town here, I think, that has a sign where you can get psychic readings and things. I've seen it before.
Yeah, I've seen it in a couple places. Didn't we see one up there when we went to Pennsylvania?
Yeah. There was one there too. You can still see them because people got to make a buck.
Those people. I don't get it.
I've never gone in to try it. I feel like I should, just to really actually test it. Because again, I'm a bit of a jerk ass, and I could just be like, "Nah, that's not true. Nah, I don't have a cousin named Bob. Nope, don't know him."
Yeah, and listen, you could go in there and say that, and I bet people do. Maybe she gets the name right, and maybe she is right. But then, like, no, that's not true at all. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true. So it's a
who
lot
knows?
of yeah.
But as far as seances are concerned, we're going to loop it back to the beginning where I believe I asked a version of this. Do either of you think, starting with Rob, and I know the answer again because we've already covered it in this episode, but just to recap, do you think it is at all possible to contact something beyond here, whether it's a living or dead being?
Oh, yeah.
And have it communicate with you through any sort of particular methods, whether it's just through your own body or through tools or through whatever.
I do. Even. You got to be careful what you let into your person. And I think there's entities and evil things out there that we can't fathom, and people let that into their being. And I think that can happen. Yes, I know people probably get mad and that's not true. That's no science. But sometimes with science, it can't prove the things that are just, I don't know, unprovable. I guess
sometimes it overlaps with religion.
And I think if all this would happen, say in a country like the Middle East, or countries in the Middle East, there's no country called the Middle East. If it happens there, where it's so old and so rich in history, like Egypt or Israel or the Middle East, I think this stuff changes. I think the seances. I think you call something that's old, something that doesn't have a name. And I don't know if that's a demon or whatever, or the energy that just has been sitting there for, thousands and thousands of years. But in terms of getting everybody together on a Saturday night to contact your old Uncle Frodo, no, I doubt it. I don't. Like I said, I believe that moves on. I think you have to get into some pretty dark things to contact certain entities. That's me personally. So take all that for what you will. There's my answer.
Steven, seances, do you think it's at all possible? And do you think there's anything that we were able to legitimately contact? What are your thoughts?
I think seance is one method of communication, like I said before, but I believe that at the end of the day, like you said a minute ago, it's just about the conduit, the tool that you use to communicate with these entities. And like I briefly mentioned earlier, I don't necessarily believe that they're ghosts or the spirits of dead people or anything like that. What I believe is that through the use of tools, be it seances, communication with AI, thought experiments, whatever, prayer, meditation, whatever, all these different tools that we have that people sometimes claim to find intelligent communication through, I think they might actually be communicating with, like Rob said, it could be demons, or it could be angels, or any other number of things. It could be jinn, or it could be, whatever. And I think at the end of the day, it's not necessarily spirits or ghosts, but I do believe that people, and not all the time, like you said, it's probably like a 1 in a million case. And I do believe that most of it, the vast majority of it, is probably false. But I believe a small percentage of it is true, and they really are communicating with some entity on another plane of existence that we normally can't communicate with, but they found a tool, or they've aligned their mental frequency to the right point where they can do that. And they can, align everything properly to where they can actually communicate with these entities on another plane.
Great. Excellent comments from everybody. I'm going to wrap it up here. Next week, we have the inevitable consequence of messing around with all the things that you did in the seance and its exorcisms. We got Mr. Robert Solomon taking charge once again to present to you exorcisms and who might do them, how they might do them, and should you have one. Dun, 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 dun. Hey, who knows?
Some people
I'm
should.
just filling in stuff. Some people need to exercise themselves because you got some stuff inside you got to get rid of. But point some fingers at people.
Put your finger down, Grandpa.
Just
old man yells at cloud.
We had a lot of clouds today. Anyway, that's all we've got for seances. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you have ever attempted to contact the spirit world or have had any sort of interaction with anything that we've talked about tonight, drop us a comment here on this video after the fact, or send us an email at that email right down at the bottom, thisuncanny@gmail.com. We would love to hear your story and talk to you about it. And that's all I have for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back next week with some exorcisms. Or also, what do we have the week after that?
Well, let's take a look.
Pull that beautiful bean footage up. Also, thank you to Cooking Basically for sponsoring this episode. We appreciate you. And if you haven't checked that out, please go do that. AS to the AP.
The next 3 episodes, starting with July 3rd, after the Exorcisms episode, obviously, on June 26th, we've got the Manhattan Project. Manhattan. I don't know why I said it that way, because that's not Manhattan.
I will answer back. Project I'm sorry.
With Steven.
I apologize.
Steven is going to present to us about the Manhattan Project. After that, I'll be talking to you about the various nuclear disasters that happened, specifically like 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl and some of those other places, and possibly some ancient things that we're still just trying to figure out. Followed by the modern day nuclear issue, India and Pakistan with Rob, because that's a big thing that could go off any single day. They could just push the buttons, and that's it. Like they got their fingers over the buttons every moment. Like they have their arm in one of those little slings so they don't get tired, and all they got to do is.
True. Yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess.
And then we've only got 3 more episodes before we end the season. We're getting close to the end of the season. Our first seasonal set of content since we moved to the seasonal presentations. I might as well mention those 2. July 24th, we've got Mysterious Locations with Steven. These are just places that are kind of strange and unusual. Followed by Unholy Ground with me to talk about places that are definitively evil and blood-soaked, and they make you feel not good. Don't go there. Stay home, please.
Stay home.
Followed by a more uplifting episode, The Sacred Sites from Robert Solomon to end the season. I want to say it's season 1, but it's like a 300 plus episode season.
Yeah.
It's the ridiculously most long season we've ever
The
had.
longest season ever.
Since everything's lumped into
One
the new
episode
season.
for every day of the year.
But then we're taking off the rest of August, and we'll see you after that in September.
Well, everyone, as we always say around this location, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We'll be back next week with exorcisms and your boy. So for me and the rest of the peoples that do the people things, have a good night, and we'll see you next time.